I had this really great phone call this morning. This gentleman and I were talking, and he was expressing just this incredible frustration at the fact that he was, writing letters to his wife. He was communicating all these things to his wife. He was working hard to get her to hear his heart, but there was no response from her. She was the betrayed, and he was the unfaithful, and he just couldn't get her to engage or respond. She just would take it, and there would be very little reaction to a letter, to an email, to a text, just nothing really at all. And I started to remember that that's what happened with Samantha and I early on. I'm a pretty good letter writer, especially when I've blown it. And so I would write letters, I bought flowers, and incidentally, don't buy flowers unless it really means something to your spouse. Samantha hates flowers. Like if I bring them now, she kind of goes, "Hey, thanks." And I know I've forgotten something really important about Samantha. She doesn't like flowers. Chocolate? Yeah. Stuff around for around the house? Absolutely. Pictures and stuff that has been well thought out? Absolutely. Cliche things like flowers to her? Not so much. And I started to remember my frustration. And what I learned from Rick is that just because your spouse is not responding doesn't mean that they're not processing. They're processing. Every letter you write, every heartfelt moment you say, "I'm so sorry and I never want to do it again and I'll do whatever it takes," every card, every text, everything that you do to try and get them to hear your heart, they're processing it. They may not give you a response, or their response, I guess better said, is maybe it's mute. They don't really say anything or communicate much, and they just say thank you, or they don't even respond. I promise you they're processing, but they may not be giving you much of a response at all. And here's something that Samantha admitted to me years down the road. She said, every card, every letter, every heartfelt, impassioned plea was always taken, but I just didn't feel you were safe enough to give you a response. And I thought it was so just intricate to the details of recovery. She was processing it. It meant something to her. It was slowly wooing her back to a place of connection. But she didn't think that I was safe enough to give me a reaction, because if she became vulnerable, I might think, okay, we're good, everything's all right now. Or if she started to cry, or if she responded in a super loving, emotional, intimate way at a card or a text or a letter or an email or a gift, and if she let her guard down, she was worried that I was going to take advantage of that and maybe try and get her in bed, or maybe try and feel like, hey, everything's good, we're golden, we're back, and we're ready to go. So I want to really tell you this, especially you unfaithful. Just because they're not responding to you doesn't mean that they're not processing it. And I'll give you some hope here. The more and more you do things like that, and the more and more you continue to try and woo them and minister to them and share your heart, it's working. They're not telling you it's working. They're not going to show you that it's working early on. They're not going to give you much of a reaction. They're going to hold their cards because they're wanting to see how do you react when you don't get a reaction that you want. Are you going to get mad? Are you going to get pissed and start to flood and say, "Look at all that I'm doing and you're not giving me anything"? That won't work. That'll only show them that you're only doing this for a reaction. You're not doing it because you actually mean it. So to land the plane, if you will, of this vlog, I want to tell you, your betrayed spouse is processing. Always. They're always processing. But just because they're not saying anything and just because they're not giving you a reaction doesn't mean that your efforts aren't working. They're waiting until they feel you're safe enough to get a vulnerable reaction. So when that starts to happen and your betrayed spouse does give you a vulnerable reaction and they do start to draw near, it's the fruit of your labor. It's working and you're starting to gain some ground. But be careful with that. It's a fragile piece to their heart and you don't want to play games with it.